All right, I'm Lonegevity, and I'm backstage with the New Old Heads podcast, and I'm here with Olivier St. Louis. All right, appreciate you being a part of it and
Thank you,
talking
man.
with us.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
First
for
thing I'm
having
going to ask you is, didn't you used to go by De Soul?
Yes.
So what's the
reason for the change?
reason for the change?
So the reason for the change, when I went by Olivier De Soul, I ended up as a feature vocalist. And whilst I was successful at doing a lot of like songwriting for other producers, Olivier De Soul ended up not getting a chance to really, I'm speaking in third person, but Olivier De Soul didn't get a chance to develop a brand with his name, so to speak. And that became quite difficult because of where I ended up in the music industry. So working with a lot of successful people, but not being able to develop a brand for myself. And so when it came time, when I got sick and tired of that, and it came time for me to kind of research myself and figure out what I was into, and then discovering I was into a lot of blues and funk. That's the stuff that I always listened to when I was at home outside of electronic music. And then I picked up the guitar. I picked up the guitar about 5 or 6 years ago. I decided, okay, this is now the time to kind of change my name and just be myself. So it's like no punches pulled, no frills, just Olivier St. Louis and what I'm about. So
Perfect. All right. Right
yeah.
on. Now, did you grow up in Maryland?
I grew up in Maryland for Virginia first, and then moved out to Maryland, and grew up in Maryland for about 9 years. And then my mother was working for the IMF, and a lot of the employees there have connections to boarding schools outside of the U.S. And so she decided that she was going to send me to boarding school in the UK. So up until about 9, I lived in Maryland.
Okay. So where do you live now?
Now I live in Germany.
Oh, okay.
Which is odd, but yeah.
Like
yeah,
Berlin
yeah.
or?
In Berlin,
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very good. Nice. You went to boarding school in the UK.
That's right.
Did you stay over there? Or did you, how did that work?
So I started boarding school.
Because you live in the UK. You lived in the UK.
I lived in the UK before Berlin.
So.
Right. So long story short, I started boarding school when I was 9. My mother sent me to boarding school in the UK near the Welsh border. And I studied in boarding school from the age of 9 until 18. I did what's called GCSEs and A-levels to get into university. Now, I applied for university in the UK, but I was interested in attending university in America. I wanted to get back to American culture because that's kind of what I held on to while I was over in the UK. Especially being a minority, I was like one of like 5 black kids amongst 300 kids in a really, really small school. So that was my identity, and I wanted to get back to it. I took a year off. I deferred. I got accepted to my first choice at university in the UK. I deferred, and inevitably it became a no-brainer for me to go back and just study in the UK. So a year off, went back to the UK, did my 3 years, and then went back to America and worked as a scientist for about 2 to 3 years, and realized that I've pretty much spent the majority of my life in the UK, and that's kind of where I'm more comfortable. Then I moved back. So
interesting. So
yeah.
Scientist, what type of stuff did you do as a scientist?
So I studied cellular and molecular biology, and I was working as a biomolecular scientist essentially.
Okay.
A lot of things to do with pharmacy and drug production essentially.
I went to school for engineering.
Mm-hmm.
And I worked in the medical field for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And we worked with, I'm familiar with that a little bit.
Right,
so,
right.
Just interesting.
Yeah,
so.
And you know how that goes.
Yep.
I mean, there's only so much pipetting you can do at a desk.
Yeah.
You know.
So you just put out a new project called Ever Since the Fall?
That's right.
All
yeah.
Right, and it's 6 tracks. You did a lot of the production on there?
Yeah, the majority of the production was me. Yeah. I had some lending and helping hands from a couple of other friends and affiliates. I had Oddisee do some drum programming on a couple of the tracks. And I have a couple of other musician friends that came in and replayed some of the stuff that I originally put on there, but it's my production. Yeah.
Okay. So do you play any instruments as well, or?
Yeah, so I play the guitar.
Okay.
It's not fair to say I play other instruments. I can get by and get my ideas out using them.
I understand.
But apart from the guitar, I don't think I could get up on stage and play anything else, you know? Actually, I forgot to say. Actually, one of the tracks on the Ever Since the Fall EP is produced by a producer called Bibio.
Yeah,
it's a
so
rework.
it was a remake.
Yeah,
Rework, yeah.
He's dope.
And
He's
you've
super
worked
dope.
with him in the past too, right?
Yeah.
So you put this project out through Jakarta Records, right?
That's right.
So how'd you link up with them?
I knew Jakarta Records for a while. In fact, during my Olivier St days, when Olivier St kind of went, sort of underneath the current, Jakarta actually came and approached me via Facebook. Actually, Yanis is his name. Yanis and Malta, the two heads or co-owners of Jakarta. Yanis came at me and asked me about releasing some music, but I ignored it because I never heard of Jakarta at the time. And then they're based in Berlin, and so just recently when I moved to Berlin, during my hiatus in Berlin, they were like, "Look, if you have any music that you want to release, we're still here." It was as simple as that, really. And I was already working on an album when I discovered I wanted to become Olivier St. Louis and root myself in blues, funk, and rock. I already had some stuff saved, some stuff in the cohort. So it was just a natural roll of events, really.
Very good. Yeah, I listened to it. I've listened to it a few times. I listened to a few more songs today.
Yeah.
Went back and retouched on it. I really like the If God Had a Wife.
Yeah.
It's jamming.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that, man.
And what was the other one? Fall in Love. I liked a lot as well.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
But they're all really good. But
thank you. And look, it's important for everybody to have their favorites. You got to have something for everybody,
So you tour a lot.
So here's what's interesting. My tour life was really heavy for about 3 or 4 years before the Berlin situation happened. I was originally working as a scientist, and I was doing music at night. And then some music I did with a particular producer called Hudson Mohawk ended up getting signed to Warp Records. And then they offered me the chance to actually tour with him. And that was the beginning of the end and the end of the beginning,
right,
in a juxtaposed kind of a way. So I'd been on tour during that time as a feature vocalist. I'd worked with a number of artists where the music actually was successful enough to actually bring me out on tour. So I was touring between 3 or 4 different artists for about 3 to 4 years. And then some unusual situation happens. That includes Oddisee and Good Company. And then some unusual situation happened where I got headhunted for a theater role. And I wasn't going to do it. And my lady was like, "Come on, just check it out and see, And sure enough, I went and auditioned. I got the part. And then they asked me to move shop. I was living in England at the time. And they asked me to move shop to Berlin. And I was so worried about leaving Good Company because I had so many plans with the music that I was working on and, the shift that I was trying to make, what I was working on at the time. I had so many plans to continue. So I was gone for about 2 years, just stationary in Berlin. And I've just come back now as of the end of 2016, beginning 2017. Okay. Yeah.
So you still live there. So do you do a lot of theater stuff then?
I did a lot of theater stuff for those 2 years. But I've taken a break for it, with it now because during those 2 years it's commercial theater. So they do everything from the ground up where I was working. And I think we did a total of 495 shows.
Oh, wow.
So I need a break. And I released those records, the Black Music EP, and Ever Since the Fall, I released those with Jakarta at the time. And what was painful was I was losing a lot of opportunity opening up for other artists and performing. So I need a break now. Now's the time to go back in, get back into touring.
Back into it. Are you doing the full tour with the Good Company this time?
Yeah, I'm doing the full tour with the Good Company this time around. Oddisee and I share the same management.
Got you.
They're a team. It's a partnership, and they kind of cross over between the two of us. One handles Amir and concentrates on Amir more often, and the other one concentrates on myself more often. But there's a kind of overlapping. So they try their best to make sure, with everything that's happening for me as Olivier St. Louis now, they try and make sure that it all sort of falls in properly with our scheduling, so I don't miss Good Company.
Got you. It's perfect.
Yeah, it is perfect. I couldn't ask for anything more. It's pretty awesome.
So with being on tour all the time, and as a creative as well, how do you create when you're on the road all the time? Or how does that work for you? Or does it work for you?
My creating on the road tends to be quite difficult. It wasn't so bad when we first started out as Oddisee and Good Company. But just recently now, with the ever-growing popularity, especially with Oddisee in particular, we have a show day after day after day after day. And so it literally is, do the show at night, pack up, get to the hotel, sort yourself out,
Right.
a couple of hours sleep, wake up in the morning, hop in the van again, and another show in the evening. So it's just like that consecutively. So it's very difficult to find time to sit down in a situation where you're relaxed enough to actually focus on making music. I've managed to do a little bit here and there for some projects that I'm trying to finish up, but for the most part, it's pretty difficult.
Yeah. So you worked on a lot of your own tracks for ever since the fall.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
So how do you make music? Do you use software? Do you use hardware? Do you use a lot of analog stuff mixed into it?
Yeah.
Is that what makes it harder for you to create on the road, perhaps? Or
I make music now with the endeavor to incorporate more analog, especially now that I'm developing as a musician. I think the computer and like software like DAWs and like software programs are really great for recording your ideas. But there's a magic with recording stuff analog, and especially since I've been working with Bibio,
Right.
And going over to his studio. He's based in Penn, not too far from Wolverhampton in the UK, and he's done well for himself, and he's got a lot of really awesome like analog equipment, old tape delays, things of that nature,
Right.
and it speaks volumes to how fluffy and how warm and how complete his production sounds.
Yep.
There's so much character. So to answer your question, started off trying to use emulators and whatever was available in the
Mhm.
software. But since then, I'm kind of gearing towards analog more and more. So some of those tracks are a little bit older, and they're a bit more digital based or DAW based. And there are others that I've actually had the chance to use, like miking and like live recording, to incorporate into the production.
Nice. All right. Spectacular. Does anybody have any more questions? Oh, what was the question? Oh, I'm sorry. I got selfish. For a second. I got
all
selfish.
good. Did I
got selfish.
answer that question properly?
You did.
though?
Yes.
Okay.